A reading from the Book of Wisdom. The souls of the just are in the hand of God, and no torment shall touch them. They seem in the view of the foolish to be dead, and their passing away with thought and affliction, and their going forth from us utter destruction. But they are in peace, for if before men indeed they be punished, yet their hope full of immortality, chastised a little, they shall be greatly blessed, because God tried them and found them worthy of himself. As gold in the furnace, he proved them, and as sacrificial offerings he took them to himself. In the time of their visitation they shall shine, and shall dart about sparks through stubble. They shall judge nations and rule over peoples, and the Lord shall be their king forever. Those who trust in him shall understand truth, and the faithful shall abide with him in love. Because grace and mercy are with his holy ones, and his care is with his elect. Verbum Domini. He guides me in the right path for his name's sake.
He guides me in the right path for his name's sake.
The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. In green pasture he gives me repose. Beside restful water he leads me. He refreshes my soul. He guides me in right path for his name's sake. Even though I walk in dark valley, I fear no evil, for you are at my side, with your rod and your staff that gives me courage. You spread the table before me in the sight of my foes. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. Only goodness and kindness shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord for years to come.
If we have died with Christ, we shall also live with him. If we endure to the end, we shall also reign with him.
Dominus vobiscum.
Et cum spiritu tuo.
Lectio Sancti Evangelii secundum Ioannem.
Gloria tibi, Domine.
Jesus said to his disciples, "All that the Father gives me shall come to me. No one who comes will I ever reject, because it is not to do my own will that I have come down from heaven, but to do the will of him who sent me. It is the will of him who sent me that I should lose nothing of what he has given to me, rather that I should raise it up on the last day. Indeed, this is the will of my Father, that everyone who looks upon the Son and believes in him shall have eternal life. Him I will raise on the last day.
Verbum Domini.
During the month of November, we especially remember the holy souls, and today Franciscans observe the holy souls of the Franciscan order, praying for the blessed repose of Franciscans who have died, of all three orders. And the Church permits us to wear either violet or black vestments. Many probably haven't seen the black vestments as we're wearing today, but either color may be used in celebrating a Mass for the holy souls. And during this month, it's a reminder, too, as we look at the last things. It's a reminder to us that we do have a limited time here on earth, and so the choices that we make are important, that we will have to give an account of how we have lived our lives and the choices that we have made. You know, I was a week ago out in Reno, Nevada, giving some talks at a Marian Eucharistic conference there. And one of the priests said to the congregation, he said, "The end is near. The end is near. The end of the election cycle is near." And we're all looking forward to that. An end to these political ads and so on. And that's a humorous, way to think about this. But also we know that it's a most serious decision that we make tomorrow, that we are taking responsibility as responsible citizens. And I would also encourage those of you who may know some of the elderly who are not able to, they don't have their own transportation, to help them to get to the voting booths tomorrow so that they too can fulfill their civic responsibilities in voting in the election that we have tomorrow in the United States of America. And today I would especially like to talk about Christian principles that should guide us in our voting. It's not enough for us to say, well, I always vote Democrat, I always vote Republican, because political parties change. Their platforms change. They revise them with each election. So it's important for us to look at their platforms, which are easily available, and to see what they stand for and what they stand against. And that we have a moral responsibility before God, then prayerfully to looking at what their positions are, to make a moral judgment and to make a decision on what we think will be the best, not only for ourselves in the present time, but what's going to be the best for our children, for their future, for future generations, for the welfare of our nation. And so each of us has that responsibility, that moral responsibility, to make that judgment based on our knowledge of the candidates and those who are running for office. There's a wonderful resource available on principles that should guide us in our voting on EWTN's website. And if you go to EWTN.com, you can find there very easily the principles for making a good moral choice in your voting tomorrow. And I think there are two things to consider, two principles that we should look at. Distinguish between prudential judgments and intrinsic evils. Prudential judgments and intrinsic evils. So there can be a disagreement, and good Catholics can disagree, good Christians can disagree on things such as taxes, how much the government should play a role in civil society, immigration policies, how we are to help the poor, these sorts of things, we can have different prudential judgments based on the information of what is the best thing for these situations or these different topics. But then there are other things that are intrinsic evils that a good Catholic could never support, a good Christian could never support. And so it's important to see, well, where do the platforms stand on these intrinsic evils that we can never support? Pope Benedict, in an address that he gave to the European Parliamentary Group on March 30th, 2006, and you can find this on EWTN's website, he says that there are three non-negotiable principles of the moral law. And the first non-negotiable is life. The protection and dignity of every human life from conception to natural death. Every other issue must be measured against this one. So it would be an intrinsic evil if a party or a candidate stands against life as opposed to life, or measures that would be against the sanctity of human life. And both platforms stand for very different things. It's important to look at that. Where do they stand on the issues of life? The second non-negotiable principle is marriage and family. The primacy of the family as the first cell of society. The protection and honor given to the faithful marriage between a man and a woman, and the family built upon it. You know, France now is banning the use of the words father and mother. Is that where we want to go? Or do we want to uphold the dignity of marriage between one man and one woman for life as the very cell that holds our society together? Again, both platforms stand for very different things. It's an intrinsic evil to be against that. It's not something that a Catholic, a Christian, could ever support. Third, authentic human freedom. This includes the first freedom, religious freedom. Recently, Father Sebastian was here. He had concelebrated at one of the morning masses, and he and the lay missionaries of charity were here. Father Sebastian was the co-founder with Mother Teresa, Blessed Teresa of Calcutta, of the men's group of the missionaries of charity, as well as the lay missionaries of charity. And he gave a conference that morning to the lay missionaries, of which I attended. And in that, he talked about after Mother Teresa's death, a CNN news reporter came up and asked him, "Will Mother Teresa's work continue?" And Father Sebastian replied, "Mother Teresa has died, but charity has not died." And that's something that the church will always continue. That's part of our gospel mandate. We heard it in yesterday's gospel. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. And Father Sebastian said it's like two wings of a bird. A bird can't fly with just one wing. It needs both of those wings in order to fly, in order to soar. And so we've always understood, as our Lord said in yesterday's gospel, the first commandment is this: you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and so on. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. You need both of those in order to grow spiritually, in order to soar in your spiritual life. And so we have to look at something that our bishops have been concerned about all year: the threat to our religious freedoms. Something that is a reality, not only for the Catholic Church, but for all people of faith. In fact, the CEO and founder of Hobby Lobby, which is one of the largest retailers for arts and crafts, David Green, he wrote a piece in which he said that they've always tried, and they are one of the 40 groups that have filed lawsuits against the federal government for the HHS mandate. And he says, Hobby Lobby, that their principle has always been to use or to guide their company according to Christian principles. And so they're not open on Sundays, for example, one of the busiest shopping days of the year, but they wanted to be guided by Christian principles. And that they do not want to observe this HHS mandate, this imposition by the government to observe that. And he says if we do not, it will cost us $1.3 million per day. Per day. $1.3 million. They have over 500 stores in 41 states. That's why they've issued their own or filed their own lawsuit, because unless we comply, there are going to be these huge fines that would be levied not only against Catholic organizations, but also Christians who don't want to provide abortifacients and contraception, and so on. George Weigel, in a piece about religious freedom versus aggressive secularism, he talked about exclusivist secularism that wants to scour our public life from any religious or moral reference points. And he said the church asks for free space to be itself, to evangelize, to celebrate the sacraments, to do the works of education, charity, mercy, and justice without undue interference from government. The church freely concedes that the state can tell the church to do some things, to obey the local sanitary laws in church kitchens hosting pancake breakfasts, for example. But the church refuses to concede to the state the authority to tell the church what to think and preach or how to order its ministerial life and serve the needy. Moreover, the church asks, and if necessary demands, that the state respect the sanctuary of conscience, so that the church's people are not required by law to do things the church teaches are immoral. One final point that I would like to make, and you can find a question and answer catechism on our voter guide on EWTN's website. And this question that is raised is this: if a candidate says that he is personally opposed to abortion but feels the need to vote for it under the circumstances, doesn't this candidate's personal opposition to abortion make it morally permissible for me to vote for him, especially if I think that his other views are the best for the people? And the response: a candidate for office who says he is personally opposed to abortion but actually votes in favor of it is either fooling himself or trying to fool you. A person who carries out an evil action, such as voting for abortion, performs an immoral act. And his statement of personal opposition to the moral evil of abortion is either self-delusion or a lie. If you vote for such a candidate, you would be an accomplice in advancing the moral evil of abortion. Therefore, it is not morally permissible to vote for such a candidate for office. There are those who, in good conscience, they say, well, I can't really vote for any of the candidates because they're not 100% in holding to the church's teaching or the natural law. Maybe they permit abortion in certain cases. And Pope John Paul II, in his encyclical, The Gospel of Life, addressed this situation. He said a particular problem of conscience can arise in cases where a legislative vote would be decisive for the passage of a more restrictive law aimed at limiting the number of authorized abortions in place of a more permissive law already passed. An elected official could licitly support proposals aimed at limiting the harm done by such a law. This does not, in fact, represent an illicit cooperation with an unjust law, but rather a legitimate and proper attempt to limit its evil aspects. So there is that saying, that choosing the lesser of two evils, but Colin Donovan says that really kind of confuses it, because we're not choosing a lesser evil, rather we're choosing a good to limit the effects of evil. If we're choosing a candidate that may allow some situations, but it's going to greatly reduce the number of abortions, then that would be a first step toward realizing the natural law and our Catholic faith. And that would be a just thing to do, that your intent is not to support the evil, but rather to limit the evil, and by choosing a less worse candidate. This is something legitimate to do and something we should be encouraged to do. Finally, at 8 o'clock today, we will have a rosary for our elections, and I would encourage you today to pray for our elections tomorrow, to offer some sacrifice today, that we may enjoy God's grace and his blessing, that in the choices that we make tomorrow, in choosing our leaders, we may choose godly men and women who will respect the dignity of human life, who will support and encourage marriage as a sanctuary and the cell of society between one man and one woman, and will uphold religious freedom and conscience.